Great. Well, I want to first off thank everyone for having me here today, and it's truly an honor to be here. You know, as a publisher of a magazine, I get reports and I get surveys and I get studies that come across my desk every day. And a couple years ago, one really struck me, and it was a survey of 90-year-old individuals. And the survey asked these 90-year-olds, okay, you guys have lived a great life, and looking back over your life, what would you do differently if you could do something different? And their answer was they would leave a legacy. These 90-year-old individuals said that if they could go back and relive their lives, they would do something that mattered to people. They would make a difference in people's lives. And really, you know, that's kind of sad when you think about it. But really, what they were saying was the meaning of life. I mean, the meaning of life for all of us is really to make a difference in the world and to know that what we do actually matters to somebody. I mean, that's the meaning of life. And, you know, as a business owner, I'm always looking for that edge in my business. I'm always looking for that little tweak that I can do to make my company better today than we were yesterday. And years ago, I joined this group of other business owners, and we get together once a month and get around a big table, and we talk about our challenges. And every month, the challenge that would come up would be, how do we inspire our employees, particularly young employees? How can we keep our young people inspired? And so, and as a group, I mean, we would hire consultants, and we would have our employees read books, and we could never get it right. And one day, I'm in this boardroom, and I'm listening to these business owners complain about how they can't inspire their people. And I started to think about that survey of the 90-year-olds. And I thought, you know, we're doing it all wrong as business owners. I mean, we need to create an environment where our employees know they're actually making a difference, and where they can know that that what they're doing actually matters. And so for my company, we got rid of the consultants. No offense to the consultants out there. We got rid of the books. And so when we onboard employees now, we simply tell them a story. And it's worked so well that we started to share this story with our customers. And I'm going to share that story with you right now. And it's a story about a young man from St. Louis that goes off to college. He gets his college degree. And like a lot of young men and women today, he leaves college and doesn't really know what he wants to do with his life. So he decides to follow his girlfriend up to Portland, Oregon. And he gets a job selling furniture in a large retail office. And some of his buddies come up one weekend to visit him in Portland. And he had signed up for a 401k seminar that weekend. And so he drags his buddies to the seminar with him, and they walk in, and they have the registration desk out front. And he comes in, and he fills out his name tag, Scott, and he sticks it on his chest. And the thing about Scott is he's a very shy and introverted guy. I mean, he had been in Portland for about 6 months and really hadn't met anybody. And so he and his friends, they go to this seminar, and then afterwards they go across the street to the bar to have a couple drinks. And something amazing, just amazing, happens to Scott in this bar. I mean, Scott meets all types of people. I mean, he meets young people and old people and skinny people and fat people. He meets darn near everybody in the bar. Now, of course, they came up to him and said, "Hey, Scott, do you know you're still wearing a name tag?" But regardless, he started building relationships with all these individuals. And for him, it was great because he had been in town for 6 months, had hardly met anybody, and now he was meeting all these people. And for Scott, it was like he now had this name tag provided him with this open front porch. Do you remember the good old days in neighborhoods when they build these neighborhoods and you had these wide, big front porches that were really inviting, and they were right up next to the big sidewalks. And people would walk next to your house, and they'd come up, and you'd have a seat with them, and you'd talk about your life, and you'd get to know your neighbors. And now look at some of these neighborhoods. I mean, some of them are gated. You can't even get in. And others don't even have sidewalks. And then the porches are way, way up away from the street, and they're really small. And in many cases, there's there's garages that are closer to the street than the porches. And in a way, they're saying, hey, we don't want to talk to you. We don't want to talk to anybody. Stay away. And that's what had happened to Scott when he was in Portland and for most of his life. But now this name tag gave him this big, huge open porch. And he told his buddies, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep this name tag on all the time. He said, because, my life has changed so much just in these couple hours. This is fantastic. So he does. And so a couple weeks later, he's on the bus. And he took the bus to work every day. And he's on the bus, and he's sitting there with his name tag at 7 a.m. And he sees this guy across from him staring at him, and he knows what's coming. This guy is trying to figure all this out, why a guy is on the bus at 7 a.m. with a name tag on. And so sure enough, it gets the best of this guy, and he gets up, walks over, and sits down next to Scott and says the ultimate sentence, why are you wearing a name tag on the bus at 7 a.m.? And Scott tells him this whole story. He tells him about how he's got this open front porch now, and he's met all these wonderful people, and he's gotten job opportunities, and he's met professional athletes through all these, just from people coming up to him and talking to him. And it was about a 10-minute conversation. And it just so happens that gentleman on the bus, his wife was the lifestyle editor of the daily paper in Portland. So he goes home that night, and he's talking to his wife, and he said, I met this guy on the bus, and he's telling her the story, and he says, you need to do a story on this guy. You have to do a story on this guy. And she says, no, that's not a story. That doesn't sound interesting. But he's persistent. And so all week, he's telling her, we really need to do a story on this guy. I think we can really help him, and it's a great message that he has. I mean, how many people miss out on wonderful opportunities in their life because, they don't have that open front porch, and you really should do this. So she relents. And a few days later, on the cover of the lifestyle section of the Portland Daily Paper is a big story on Scott with a big picture of him on the bus with his name tag. And the headline read, Man Wears Name Tag for Friendlier Society. Well, what often happens when a daily newspaper runs a story is that the Associated Press Wire will pick up this story. So that's what happens. So within a couple of days, Scott's story is in papers all over the country, in New York, in St. Louis, in Miami, in LA, all over the place. And within a couple more days, he's all over the world. He's in newspapers in Mexico City, and he's in newspapers in Vancouver and Montreal and all throughout Europe. And then USA Today calls, and Scott is on the cover of the Life section of USA Today with his paper, with his picture. And then CNN calls, and Anderson Cooper does a live interview with Scott in Portland. And then meeting planners from all over the world start to call Scott, and they say, Scott, I'm having this big convention coming up, and should people wear their name tags on the right side or the left side? I mean, should we use blue ink or black ink? I mean, Scott has become the expert on name tags. And then meeting planners start calling him up, and they say, hey, Scott, if we give you $4,000, will you come out and speak to our next group about your experiences? Or if we give you $5,000, will you come out and speak? And so Scott, who did not really know where his career was going to go, is starting to figure out that his career is finding him, right? So Scott turns this one interaction on the bus one morning into a six-figure speaking career. And Scott today lives in New York City, and he still wears his name tag, and he still speaks all over the world. But we tell Scott's story to every employee that comes on board with us, and now our clients, for three simple reasons. Number one is you never know the impact you can make on someone else's life. It only takes one time. For Scott, his life changed from one conversation on one bus in a 10-minute time period. And you just never know. Indirectly, directly, you never know the impact you could make on someone else's life. And the second reason we tell that story is you have to be open to those opportunities. I mean, Scott would normally go to work on the bus every day, and he'd hold up the newspaper, and he wouldn't talk to anybody. And if he had done that morning, he would have missed out on an incredible career, an incredible thing that happened to him. And how many times do we all get on an airplane and never speak to the person next to us? And the person next to us could hold the key to happiness for us. Could be that person on the bus for Scott. And we'll miss out on that opportunity. And the third reason we share this story with our employees is because we want to give them permission. We want to give our employees permission to be the person on the bus every day that gets up and helps another human being. We want to give them permission to do that. And there's so many ways in business every day that we have the opportunity to change someone's life. I mean, in small ways and large ways. I mean, there are incoming phone calls that come in. There's outgoing phone calls. You know, there's so many ways that we can make an impact on people's lives. And we tell that to our employees because, you know, and as business owners, we have a lot of things to worry about. And we have profit margins, and we have expenses, and we have revenue figures we have to hit. But for our employees, being the person on the bus should be their primary responsibility. And we tell that to them, and we want them to accept that responsibility, because if they do that within our company, when they're 90 years old and they have to take that survey, they're not going to answer, I wish I would have done something that mattered, and I wish I would have done something that made a difference. And for us as business owners, we don't have to worry about inspiring these employees, because they'll be inspired every day they come to work. So I tell you Scott's story, and I hope you share Scott's story with everyone you know. And I hope that every day you work to be the person on the bus that gets up, walks across the aisle, sits down with someone, and changes their life. Thank you very much.